Okay, this is stuff from your superpower questionnaire. Okay, so you said you wanted to assist individuals to better access government resources and services by using competitive intelligence methodologies. Right information, connect them to appropriate people.
Hmm.
So we're just going to park that. We're going to do a read through of all of this information, and then we'll start putting it together and talking about patterns.
Yeah.
Okay, so the problem you noticed is people had difficulty addressing governments and accessing funding is hard, accessing funding and support, and they need help simplifying the process. They just can't seem to wade through all the stuff.
Right. It was very complicated, so it's
Yeah.
more
And
complicated than it needs to be.
right, of course. And most people don't have the ability to hold so many facts in their mind at once
Hmm.
and then connect them. It just becomes a blur after a while. So you like to make processes easier for people. Okay, so you combine political science and library science. Okay, and so you provide government relations, but in a more research-backed way. This is the thing I want to dive into the most. I think that's what needs the most definition.
Hmm.
Government relations may send people down the wrong path.
Right. Right.
So let's think about that. I think I read this book on positioning. It's called Awesome. And it's kind of the seminal book on positioning. I can throw that
Okay.
into the um, additional resources. But one of the things the woman in that book talks about is that we set the context for people understanding our products and services by the category we put it in. And
Right.
that
Right.
gives people a set of assumptions of what they can expect your service to be like based on the category it belongs in. So I'm not
Right.
sure your services belong in government relations.
Yeah.
Uh, Go ahead.
Uh, no, I was just going to um, um, send you something actually.
Sure.
Um, that. One moment. It'll take me 2 seconds to find it
Yep.
because shockingly, I have. So I'm just. This is an email that I actually, sorry, sent out to um a number of people, like as sort of a promotion, like an advertisement sort of idea. But
Mm-hmm.
and so the key to this was actually just the and you talk about the categories and stuff like that because in a lot of cases, if I say, "Oh, I do competitive intelligence," people stare at you and they wonder what the hell you're talking about. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if you say, so the reason I use government relations is because more people seem to understand what that means
Mm.
versus, but it's actually not just strictly government relations. It's actually broader than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which which is interesting because it's also one of those things where, excuse me, you want to not pigeonhole yourself either, right? Does that make sense?
Yes. Except that pigeonholing or being specific to an ideal client is really helpful. And the way
Okay.
to avoid being pigeonholed is to have different pitches with different angles for different groups. Whereas if you try to be general and include everyone in one pitch, it creates vagueness and confusion.
Right.
Okay, so, oh, do you need a minute to still find the thing you were going to send me?
No, I sent it to you already.
Okay, great. I will pull that up. So, but I want to finish this section here.
No, no, that's fine.
Um, okay, so your mixed political skills in library science, research and intelligence for public affairs, research-based strategy, not about lobbying. So
Right,
your intelligence-based model cuts through noise. This sounds like a secret sauce to me. You have a unique way of doing things. That's super valuable. I love this little story right here. This is terrific because it's so succinct, but it just really highlights your value.
right.
And we can even you can even enhance this story by giving a few more details about the organization. There are
Mhm.
ways to give details without revealing who or what the organization was.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, what you did, you put together a strategy. I love this, the simplicity, who to approach, what to apply for, what to say in the application. That is so concrete. When you're that concrete, people
right,
can understand what you do. And like it sounds incredibly valuable. If someone just had the knowledge to tell me who to go to, what to apply for, and what to say in the application, where my
right,
chances of getting funding were exponentially more than if I was just sending out a random application.
right,
I mean,
right, right.
yeah, to me, this little statement really nails what you do.
Well, I think for me, one of the things I like to is say that it's actually very complete, right? Because it's not it's a process as opposed to, throwing stuff and seeing what sticks. Like here's the strategy, like here's who you approach, here's what you're applying for, and this is what you tell them so that you increase your chances of getting funding.
For sure. And this that you do is why I see a possibility with Barbara. So
Right,
Barbara is really skilled at this middle bit,
right.
or the middle two piece, what to apply for and what to say in the application. She knows all the ups and downs of that. Not that you don't, haven't seen you in action on that, but the piece she can't do
She's
is the
probably done a lot more
strategy.
than this, huh? Yeah,
Yeah, she doesn't know as much about the first one. She does know some, but
right,
I think you would shine on that first one.
right, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think some of the sort of ideas is all around just being able to connect the dots as to who has money and who, like, that was one of my, strengths in the sense of I actually understood, okay, wait a minute, these people need money for this. There's this program, and this program, and this is what they need to qualify. So this is what they need to say, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
that makes sense.
And so I think that's your wonder and invention working together. So you ponder the possibilities for an organization or a business. You say, okay, I see what they're trying to do. They could apply here, here, or here.
Hmm.
These, and you told me before about your ideal title for an autobiography is You Pick
Right,
because of this wonder
right.
genius.
Yeah,
You're laying out the options. But the really great thing about your skills is that you don't just have wonder, you have invention. So invention is the one that sees, or wonder sees the possibility, invention lays out the path to get there.
right, right. That's what I was doing this morning, actually. I was
Tell me
explaining
about
that
it.
because was that?
Tell me about it.
Oh, my appointment that I had this morning was with a trademark lawyer.
Hmm.
And so I'm going to actually trademark Your Brain is Not Full in the logo, and just also to go out and to be able to push that as sort of a mantra for lifelong learning. Um, so it's actually not as expensive as I thought it would be, so that's a good thing.
No.
Um, but that's the key was just to in explaining it, it's sort of about how you get the pathways for people and organizations to get additional resources for training and continuous learning as opposed to, okay, you finished, high school or university now, you're done. It's like, no, you're not. But they need some
Hmm.
help and encouragement to continue along, right? So how do we actually uh, get that for companies and or people? Because like even on the people side of stuff, I met with the executive director of Polytechnics Canada last week. And I was telling her about there's a program in the government of Canada called Canada Training Benefit, and each person can claim up to $250 a year in like for course fees, um, and up to a maximum of $5,000 over how many years it is. But anyhow, the take up on said program is very small. Actually had to follow. I actually had to file an access to information request with the government to find that out. Um, and then the other part of my access request was what types of courses are people like applying for, like claiming for their training? Like, is it basket weaving? Is it, are they learning Python? Are they learning whatever? Couldn't tell me because they don't collect that information.
What?
Yeah, they don't collect it. So my
It
my
just, that
my,
seems like
my
it's
good
so
friends in
important
the
for
post.
results.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, that's excuse me. So they don't actually collect that information. So it's a very valuable info that they don't collect. And as I said, the person I was meeting with was somewhat appalled that they didn't do that because, like, well, we could use that because, like, they have all sorts of like they represent a lot of the community colleges across Canada, like the Senecas and Humbers and George Browns of the world, and it's like, well, if we knew what people were actually taking or what the demand was, you
Oh,
could actually have evidence, more evidence-based approach to what you're creating programs for.
totally. I
But they don't
love
collect
that.
it. They don't
Right.
collect the information, right?
Now, you've mentioned something like that before. That's a beef. So I think that's another important thing to pay attention to when you're teasing out your strengths and your geniuses, the things that drive you crazy, that
Oh,
are
I have
bees
loads.
in your bonnet.
Yes, yes.
Keep track of those. And so not having proper data, that annoys you. So that means you feel it's important, you value it, and you know how to use it well.
Yeah.
Okay, so now wonder and invention, your geniuses, but you also have working competencies in discernment and enablement. So you don't mind using intuition and instincts to evaluate and assess ideas or plans. You're pretty good at that. Like if you've got a good gut, but you prefer it backed up with facts, you like the data backed up. And you don't mind providing others with encouragements and assistance for projects and tasks. So implementing isn't your favorite, but you can do it. Would you say that's accurate?
But it's not so much implementing, it's just sort of getting down to sometimes if I have to get too detailed, I get annoyed because I um figured someone should, if they really wanted to do it, they should have figured it out by now, but they haven't. So I actually have to, explain it to them, which
Right.
is frustrating.
Okay.
Um, but you know what I mean? It's so the matter of intuition, and sometimes I actually can do it fairly quickly and understand why something would be a good idea or why something isn't a
Hmm.
good idea. Um, and sometimes that's not a good way of making friends and influencing people, but sometimes it's actually, at the end of the day, it makes a probably a better decision. So
Hmm.
because the information that it's based on, where someone's just like going on a hunch, as you would say, versus, well, wait a minute, like why would I? I'll give you a perfect example. We had when I was in government and we had a communications person that wanted to have Labor Day, right? And wanted the minister to meet with every single like different union rep in Canada, sort of idea, like a large, not every single union rep, but the heads of the big union groups and about various things that, well, so they've already met with like A, that some of them had already met, but B, it was just like, let's just have one day where everyone gets to beat up on my boss, like, and like, no thanks. That's like not helpful. How is this going to help? And then they're just going to go on and what do you call it? It accelerates the negative because they go out
Mm.
and do, oh, we met with so and got zero results, therefore, da da da. It's always like that, right? Thinking, how about we cut our losses at the beginning and not do it, right? That's sort of my,
So
um,
instinctively, you know when something's like, that idea just is not going to fly.
yeah, that doesn't work with me because, and sure enough, also the other thing too was I figured that the powers that be up the chain wouldn't have approved said event, and of course I was absolutely correct on that. In fact, um, yeah.
Yeah, so that's something to pay attention to as well when you get those gut feelings, those intuitions, those niggling things. It's like there's something here, and with your research powers, you can go in and find out what's behind it if you need to.
Mhm.
So there were some fuller descriptions in your Working Genius report, and I highlighted a couple other things. So in the wonder description, the benefits of this genius include asking big questions, prompting people to consider assumptions that may need to be questioned, and challenging the status quo. Does that sound like you?
Yes, very much so. I mean, that example I just provided was sort of like, asking the questions and considering the assumptions, like why were you going to do this and what was the benefit? What did you think it was going to be? What was the win out of doing this, right? So,
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so then this is from a conversation. This is, I think it's ChatGPT's summary of,
mhm.
I love
Yeah,
this, insight hunter, lifelong learning evangelist, strategic mindset architect. Right, so you're methodical, right? Laying the groundwork to thrive as an independent information professional. Special edge and competitive intelligence suits your love of pattern spotting and digging deep. You're always chasing the smarter phrase, the sharper question, the clearer lens. You don't just connect the dots, you interrogate them. And you said you resonated especially with the digging deep piece.
right. And I think that's what I've tried to do is actually to um when we go back to the concept of how do I explain what it is that I do, and trying to keep the digging deep piece into um as part of it that says it's okay, it's not just skimming the surface, it's not just like, you know, um reading a few news clips and saying this is what's happening. It's more digging deeper to find out the different stories, or not stories. Well, stories, yes, and also connections too, right? Like so, um, as to why things happen or why things don't happen in some
Hmm.
cases too, right? But it's just the whole idea of digging deeper, um, uh, but at the same point in time, not wanting to be sort of, again, I'll go back to my pigeonhole example of not wanting to be pigeonholed as just a researcher, right? Right. So the digging,
Yes.
it's the methodology that that leads to a better strategy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's the piece. Once we finish going through the rest of this, I want to dig. That's the piece I want to talk about is your methodology, how you do things, and
Yeah.
why you feel like it's so important.
Right.
Um, and then there's one more thing I want to say on that is that when you're designing your services and explaining what you do, it's really important to talk about ultimate outputs and goals of your customer. So
Right.
we don't want to talk about just what you do, as in the mechanics. We want to talk about what it's going to do for the client. And that's where, in this top piece, I think you're on to something. I put together a strategy, who to approach, what to apply for, what to say in the application. The result was 3 million in funding.
Right.
So I think a little more brewing on that is going to
Mhm.
bring you to your description. Okay, but let's finish looking at ways you add value. Okay, this was something else that you mentioned in our conversation. I also want to teach people.
Mhm.
So you said ChatGPT summary did not cover this desire you have to teach people.
Mhm.
So you want to demonstrate that a way you're showing them a better way to do something. And you really like to lay out possibilities for them so that they can choose the best course of action with really thorough information, knowing that if I choose this, this is what will happen. If I choose this, then this is what will happen.
Mhm.
Okay, and this is the piece about converting it to an output. And then there was this really great statement from your former boss.
Mhm.
Jim has continued to enhance his reputation for resourcefulness in gathering and analyzing information needed by others to responsibly make strategic decisions. He uncovers information intelligence that others fail to. Right, and she says it's because of your array of research techniques. So she's touching on your methodology and your secret
Mhm.
sauce there, but also because of your vast network of senior level contacts in industry, not for profits in all levels of government, in both in Canada and abroad. And I love this statement. One of your many strengths is ability to quickly scope, analyze the situation, identify gaps in knowledge, fill the gaps, and develop a sound strategic solution. So
I use
here
that
we're
one quite. I use that one quite frequently.
good. So I think this is getting us closer to what you might say in a conversation to convince people to work with you and of what
Right.
you might do. Now, the way she's talking about it, the only piece that's missing
Mhm.
is ultimate outcome for the client.
Right.
So, ultimate outcome that people care about are save time, save money, enhance reputation, make money.
Right.
Let's put make money here. So then it's a case of tying this to these in a nice succinct statement, and also brewing it with that earlier statement. This level of concreteness that you talked about. Right. I put strategy of who to approach, what to apply for, and what to say in the application.
Right.
Now, you don't need to have all this worked out yet. This is, we're feeding your brain to brew on this, and you're going to do a bunch of iterations. You're going to test it with people. You're going to be talking to customers, defining their pain point. And this part of it is probably going to feel kind of uncomfortable because you love to get it on the first crack. But with this kind of thing, you just can't because it's a dialogue with your customers about really
Right.
listening deeply and digging deep into what they really need and want. And you, in conversations, you're testing out or what you say to them, either in writing or verbally, and you're watching their response.
Right.
You're seeing when people lean in, when they get it, when they say yes to working with you. And it's a process, it's frustrating. And there's going to be times where you think, yes, I nailed it. And then you put it out in the world and it's like, no, still not.
Right. Right. Because there's a lot of times where you have to sort of pay attention to their reaction to something to see how they've understood it or not understood it for that matter. Because I try and keep things as simple as possible in the sense of getting rid of the sort of governmentese and bureaucratese language that I would use not with clients, but with talking to the government people of to explain something, because then they understand what it was I was looking for, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, you're a cross-cultural person in that you speak bureaucraties and governmentese
Sadly, I
and
speak bureaucracies and acronyms. Yes.
that would actually make a very funny LinkedIn post to have a whole bunch of acronyms and then have a translation.
Well, there was a YouTube video actually that was made. It was called "Shit Bureaucrats Say," and it was a little kid talking about it. Um, and so someone's little kid talking about you know acronyms and basically um, things that are is really specific to the government of Canada, right? So it was quite funny. So.
That would be, yes, that kind of thing would be great. Okay, so let's spend the rest of our time talking about your research methodology.
Okay.
And then we'll also dive into some more stuff about your clients. But okay, research methodology. Let's start there. What do you do that other people don't do?
Um, so my foundational sort of background information that I use about the program would be knowing things in a more of a holistic approach, like how does it connect to the rest of government and how does it
Mhm.
fit in with um, other government priorities and whether or not it like just to determine what the likelihood of it is of something going forward or become or becoming a higher priority. Right. So, or the likelihood of something happening or not happening. Um, and that's a various number of sources inside and outside of government as well, whether they be secondary sources like internet sort of stuff, or actually even primary sources like I talk to a lot of people uh, constantly. Excuse me. So it's a matter of how you do that, but then knowing where some of the deeper information is buried within the government is also a key part of my, methodology in the sense that, a lot of people just base everything on a simple news release, and I'll actually look at, you know, stuff that happens before that news release even gets created, or what is someone working on, what potentially someone is actually focusing on, because the information is there, it's all available, publicly available. It's just a matter of knowing where it is, right? And a lot of people don't have that sense of where to go look for something, right? Like I'll use an example. Like if you do public opinion poll research for the government within a government department, within 6 months, that the results of those public opinion research has to be published on the Library and Archives Canada site. Very few people actually know that that's there. So if I want to see that the Department of Veteran Affairs did a survey about the treatment of veterans in Canada and what the veterans thought about how they're treated by Veterans Affairs Canada, um, if that survey has to be published within 6 months. So in Library Echoes Canada, they actually have all that research. So you can actually get all of the data tables, you can get all of the final reports, data tables, the survey methodology. It's all there. And people just don't know it's there because it's actually fairly decent research. So one of my clients was doing some stuff on youth programming, and the government had done some research on the Youth Criminal Justice Act. So this is like how do we help kids at risk to get jobs? Well, this is what these people are looking for and what they're potentially providing services to. So this is an opportunity down the road that you can apply for funding for that type of service, right? Um, and then what was the other one? Yeah, and then there's a lot of like forward, like there's documents that have to be filed with the government that are like look ahead documents. Um, So there's one, excuse me, document that's it's provided to Treasury Board every year. It's called the Forward Regulatory Plan. So if you're going to change any regulations within the government, you actually have to file a plan that what you're going to do 5 years in advance. So this stuff isn't just comes out. I mean, sometimes it gets overtaken, but sometimes it's because of circumstances. Um, but in a lot of cases, it follows a path, so you can actually look at injecting yourself into the process there. So the research as to how you would do this, and then the other part of my research methodology is also in who else is working on the same situation or file, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Well, there's two reasons for that. A, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, but B, you also have to see, do you have competition for scarce dollars, right? Um, and what is their approach? Or is there opportunities for you to collaborate with them if they're doing similar? Because a lot of times there's a lot of unnecessary competition that's made, particularly in the not-for-profit sector, um, that when you look at it as a social goal, it's like, well, wait a minute, folks, like, why are you spending all this time in competing to achieve the same goal, right? Um, Sadly, most people don't like the answer, but that's just.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask you a few questions about that to make sure I understand. So you're able to access these lesser known sources of information because you have this big picture view of how government works.
Right.
Okay.
So it's a big
Uh,
picture piece, but it's also knowing where the government information is stored, like organized, right? Or not
hmm.
organized for that matter.
Mhm. And that's the librarian in you, right? You know, where
Correct.
information is stored. Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I have reams and reams of notes. That was one of my favorite classes at library school was actually my government information courses because it's just like right up my alley around where you could um, sources of government information and um, uh, both in Canada and internationally, actually. 'Cause I took an international one as well.
Oh,
So it was
wow.
interesting. It was interesting today that for example, the lawyer I was talking to this morning was talking about, World Intellectual Property Organization and the Madrid systems of patents and trademarks. And I was like, yeah, 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 I know all that. She was shocked that I already knew how the systems worked. Like, you're probably one of the more informed clients I've ever had. And I was like,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm. So if somebody was doing some work globally, you could also potentially help them with stuff.
right.
Probably partly because you know the pattern for how things generally work, and then you can leverage that to get the specifics of a particular country or government.
Exactly. Like, I mean, so for example, if even if someone was doing something here in Canada, it's like,
Yeah.
well, here's an example of what they did in, I don't know, pick up a country, Finland, and that seemed to work, right? So obviously there are different circumstances that will differ, and you have to spot where the differences were, right? Um, but if you can actually look at other jurisdictions for possible um, solutions, that's also part of my um, sort of digging deeper research because it's looking at different jurisdictions um, as to how to do it or what has previously done or and so what some of it has been done and didn't work, right? So, it also avoids the risk of um, going down a hole that you waste a lot of time and you could have already known that so and so tried to do that and didn't work because of X, Y, and Z, right?
Okay. And these things that you know how to find, if people did a Google search, they wouldn't find them because,
It's not there.
oh,
It's not indexed. Not everything is indexed on Google, right?
okay.
I actually have, if you go to my website, I actually have a blog post on that.
Hmm.
Uh, where I actually typed the name of the survey. This was a government survey into the Google search engine. Like, here's the
Hmm.
actual name in bracket, in sorry, quotation marks, and
Hmm.
still, and then Google still couldn't find it.
Mm.
It was never
Wow.
indexed that far. It was a sort of obscure area within Library Archives Canada. It's not actually archived on Google.
Hmm.
I haven't tried it with ChatGPT yet, but I mean,
Hmm.
um, with Google, it didn't. I used Google and a couple other search engines, and they didn't um, work.
Okay.
And that's part of my other problem is that I sort of say I go sort of beyond. I've actually done a number of webinars on going beyond Google because people think, oh, I'm just searching Google and it's going to find it. That's my research, right? And it's like, well, okay, but it's actually getting worse, I
Hmm.
think, because the amount of stuff that's upfront sponsored, right, is huge. And even if you put an exact, question in with a proper like Boolean language, whatever, still not going to find it. It's going to actually come up with something other than what you're looking for.
Hmm.
So I'm finding it's actually getting worse because there's too much information out there.
Hmm.
Right? It's just like
That's so true.
yeah. Actually, this just came out yesterday. It was this uh, StatsCan did a study on the concern about misinformation, connections to trust in media, confidence in institutions, civic engagement, and hopefulness. I haven't finished reading the entire study yet, but but that's the problem is the number. I like the overall is that it's actually a growing concern. Right? Just the levels of misinformation that's out there, and people who should know better. But the problem is that the number of people that aren't paying attention and will just buy whatever is sold to them, sort of idea, is unfortunately increasing. Right?
Hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. Okay. So just pulling it together into a summary of your personal strengths that provide a business edge. Um, I'm going to say a couple things and we'll chat about it and then I'll also write something. Just looking for your statement before. Who to approach, what to apply for, and what to say. Right. So you're able to provide the research. But I'm just going back to your boss's statement about you too. I think this is it. Number one, scope and analyze the situation. Identify gaps in knowledge. Fill the gaps.
Well, and I think that fill the gap piece is a bit broad, is a bit be more expanded in the sense that I'm like a sort of information sponge in the sense that the amount of stuff that I read per day on just what's going on within certain sectors is sort of like ridiculous. Not ridiculous, but it's a lot, which allows me to, keep ahead of things. So, but it's just outputting it into something that shows that demonstrates that I can do this, right?
For sure. Okay. So what you do for clients, scope and analyze the situation, identify gaps in knowledge, fill the gaps, provide strategic options. She said solutions, but I want to say options because
Yep.
you talked about that. Okay, so when we say identify gaps in knowledge, do you want to add to that? Is there anything else you want to say that makes that more specific?
I think the thing was just from a methodology standpoint, one of the things that I would add there was identify gaps in knowledge through constant horizon scanning or environmental scanning, because I think that's one of my key methodologies that I use to, you know, to collect information.
Or is that fill the gaps through constant horizon scanning? No, horizon scanning helps you identify the gaps.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what helps you fill the gaps?
So filling the gaps is more from the I guess it's through the analysis of the available information or the applic um hold on a second. Applicable information.
This isn't perfect yet, including from obscure sources and personal relationships.
Yeah. Well, I would actually put and personal relationships and networks. Because in a lot of cases, it's actually, I don't know. One of my favorite quotes is a quote about the types of intelligence, and either you know something about the subject yourself or you know where to find information on it, right? So it's like, well, I don't know all the answers, but I can figure out how to find the information pretty quickly.
Okay, so you either know the answer or know where to find the answer,
Right.
right? Which is hugely valuable. Okay, so provide strategic options that do what? Let's dive into this a tiny bit. What do your strategic options do for clients?
Well, I mean, I guess it eventually gets to the solution that they're looking for, right? So what sort of that ultimate outcome piece, right?
Yeah, I'm going to put that
So if
back
you look at
down
the
here.
ultimate outcome, does it save them money? Does it help them manage risk? Does it help them do product development? Does it help, or develop, as a advocate for something? I mean, some of it, advocate for legislative change or advocate for funding or, yeah,
Save time and money as they develop products, advocate for legislative change, or access funding. It's not quite right yet, but it's getting closer.
no, no, it's not 100%, I don't think, but
Okay. As we're wrapping up, um, I'm going to send a version of this to you along with our full transcript so that you can
okay.
continue working on it. So do whatever you can with assignment one. Keep going on assignment two, which
Yes.
is were you able to send out any emails asking people for when they've seen you at your best?
No, I haven't got to that yet because I was busy working on
Yeah,
my long-term care issue slash changing the world
no,
from that perspective. Because
no
now,
problem. That's
that now that my Catherine isn't here, it actually um changed a number of events that we had planned to do Friday,
Mm.
Saturday.
Oh yeah.
So I had to fix that and straighten that out. And then the other thing was for the weekend that I'm coming down to Kitchener-Waterloo, I actually now have to come down earlier because I have to go to the funeral of one of my former classmates from university who
Oh,
passed away
right.
last week.
Okay.
So he's the same age as I am. He just died of a heart attack, right? So it's like, okay.
Oh,
Um, and he
that's
was one of
sad.
the, people who really got me involved in a lot of political stuff. So,
Hmm.
it's
When's
on
the
the
funeral?
it's Saturday, July the 5th. So
Oh, okay.
instead of coming down on the 6th, which I normally would have done like on the Sunday, I'm going to come down on the Saturday. And the funeral's just outside of Peterborough, so it's sort of on the way. Well, not. So we have to organize that, right?
Right. Okay.
Um, More fun and excitement.
Yeah.
Plus all sorts of other fun and excitement about, like my wife just sent me a note about, did you have to book an appointment with the people that are we have to get a new shed put in our backyard, like a storage shed, but it's being built, but I just have to organize that.
Hmm. Wow.
Because it has
Lots
to
of
fit.
things on the list.
Oh, there's so many things to do. It's crazy.
So yeah, the session on Wednesday,
Yep.
Barbara's for sure coming. I'm inviting a couple of other people. Have you
Okay.
interacted with Veronica before? Veronica Hurtado? Have you had
Yep.
any
Yep.
personal meetings with her?
I just had a Zoom call with her, Veronica. Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to invite her because I actually think that she could be a potential client for you.
Okay.
Not her personally, but she's incredibly well connected with business owners and business owners of the size you would want to sell your services to.
Okay.
And she's just one of those natural connectors who, if she knows what you're doing, she'll connect you to people.
Right. Fair enough.
So
I'm
then,
the same
and
way.
what
Hmm?
was that?
I like to be the same way.
Yeah, no, you're good at that too, for sure. And she's also a friendly face. Like
Yeah.
she would come to the session and be listening as a potential client, but she's also just going to
No,
be
no,
helpful.
she's great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she's really great.
I had a call with her shortly after I did my presentation at the Future Worker
Oh, okay.
meeting. So she
Yeah.
had, she had follow-up questions, so I
Oh,
had no
awesome.
problem. So
Yeah, in addition to the work she does with PO Canada, which they are primarily larger companies looking to hire people cross-border,
right,
which is why your competitive intelligence and knowledge of government regulations could be helpful for those clients.
right.
Her husband runs a business that serves business owners. So his business could use your competitive intelligence as well as the businesses he serves.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So I bet you she would be a person who would do a follow-up market research call with you when that sprint comes, client clarity.
Yep,
And she could potentially introduce you to people who you could do market research calls with who
right,
are outside of your network.
right. Yeah, fair enough.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will send out some information about how to prepare for that
Okay.
event on Wednesday. What I'm going to do is for everyone who comes, I'm just going to do a tiny bit of teaching at the beginning,
Okay.
tips on how to show up in a networking meeting so that you're not just blasting people with the pitch, but you're
Right.
setting it up
Yep.
with a question or two that sets the context. And then you're sharing your pitch in a way that's of interest to them. And then you've got a results story in your back pocket. So
Right.
you've,
No.
you've, yeah. So assignment one will help you generate those. Or if you just add a couple more details to this one you already shared, you're golden.
Well, I'm just finishing, as I say, finishing off assignment one, so I just have to
Mhm.
finish that, and then assignment two. So I plan on doing that actually this evening, sending out to me now. So
Yeah. Yeah, that one will be ongoing, but I bet you people will answer fairly quickly.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Kind of a fun exercise.
But it basically like so I actually got a lot of feedback from the thing that I just sent you now, which was sort of an advertising pitch piece, and I actually got significant feedback from that, which was good.
Mm.
Um, didn't actually lead to a whole lot of business, but it actually was it started generating ideas, and people would refer me
Okay.
to other people. So
Oh, great. Well, it's a beginning anyway. It's not
exactly.
silence.
No. That was the point, right? It's not like crickets, right? Which is a good
Yeah,
thing. So
absolutely. It's a beginning.
yeah,
Awesome. Okay. Well,
okay.
I'll send you a follow-up to this, but I feel like
Right.
we're getting closer to honing in
Narrowing it
on how
down.
you add value. Yep. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Sounds
See you
good.
later, Jim.
I
All
will see
right.
you on the future of work and learning
Wednesday. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep. Okay.
tomorrow. All
Yeah.
right. See you. Bye.
Tomorrow. See you. Bye.